I'm
Well, I'll share a perspective on club finance that the board.
Okay, I just.
A perspective.
Rich. We
No,
can't have
I was testing the link to make sure people
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was that you?
Yes,
I was just testing the link.
Oh, okay.
and I'm going to talk a little bit about club finance, some of the principles. I'll share some background on our membership and look at UPC versus comparable clubs. We'll talk about the master plan and its impact, some alternative capital funding approaches, and perhaps of most interest to folks in Sloane and Henley, I will compare your homes on total cost of ownership with homes in Lakewood Ranch. The planning group made the projections that the club would generate an operating surplus annually and that there would be no new assessments for 3 to 5 years. We've had both those things have occurred. Our financial performance shows that we've had positive cash flow in each year, even through COVID. And we're projected to show a fiscal 22, which ends September 30th of this year. Again, with a very positive situation, perhaps $500,000 of positive cash flow.
Question. On that, how much has been added to reserves?
We'll talk about reserves in a minute.
Okay.
Each year, the surplus would move to reserves, as well as initiation fees, as well as 10% of outside golf revenue. And the capital dues that we're planning for fiscal 23 would also all go into this capital reserves budget.
Okay. So it's unlike an HOA though, where you have specific assets and the reserves are designated, et cetera.
Well, we have completed a draft of a capital reserve study
Okay.
that looked at every asset in the club over $2,500. It's a real, talking about an eye chart, it's a real eye chart to look at. And it projects what we will need in each year going forward. And we're going to blend those to be sure that long-term we have the reserves we need to manage the future of the club.
Perfect.
Just a quick statement, we've had huge demand for outside dining, started with COVID, but it's been maintained post-COVID. As you recall, we didn't have any dining in the cafe in the evening prior to COVID. Now it's a regular event, regardless of weather. And we're building a new outside facility with even more capacity. That speaks to needs in the kitchen. This demand for golf, even with its aggressive pricing, our in-season rate in prime time is $139. Very aggressive. We'd probably be at $150 next year. This is up from $89 to $99 in 1918-19. Increases in membership. We now have over 2,200 members in the club. That's about 1,200 and some odd units, but 2,200 people we're serving. So we have more people interested in club activities. And the home turnover is low. There are new buyers and new members. Homes are turning over, there's low inventory, new buyers and new members. As you recall, we had about $4 million from the bond proceeds to use for maintenance and improvements at the club. We didn't have any reserves. When we started, we had an aging infrastructure that we're aware of. If you look at the bond proceeds plus the additional club revenue that was generated earlier, if you will, the surplus, and then non-operating income that we carved out for use in projects. We had about $5.7 million available for activities. The dining renovation was, in this chart, projected at 2.5 million. It'll probably run 2.8 before we're done. The golf course rehabilitation and infrastructure, basically the bunkers, tee boxes, the greenside bunkers and tee boxes, and cart paths have been about 1.6 million. And you can see the other projects up there. Basically, we've exhausted those funds.
$11.
Let me talk a little bit about how I, as treasurer, and the members of the board look at club finance. I think the major role of the board is to say, where are our new members coming from and what do they want? And make sure we have it available for them. We have to respond to needs of current members, but it's tomorrow's home buyers that are going to maintain the value of our homes and community. We have a footprint. Every club has a footprint. And our job, if you will, is to teach members that we have to properly fund the footprint to enable the facilities to move forward. We have both in the Homeowners Association, UPCAI, a commitment for outstanding golf, tennis, and other leisure activities in a club environment. We have a commitment in the UPCC mission and vision for exemplary facilities, amenities, and service. We have to fund the footprint to achieve that objective. We also have to remember that unlike a business with profit centers in different locations around the world or with different product centers, clubs operate differently. Member dues essentially subsidize all activities, and activity participation is always a fraction of members. In our situation, only about 23% of homeowners are full members.
Full golf members.
Yes. About 11% are play tennis. 54% are social members. And they are looking for activity. The social fabric is what makes the club successful. If, you meet somebody on the tennis court who's a spouse of somebody who plays bridge, and all of a sudden you're at a bridge game, and then you're going out to dinner in the club. And you don't have to participate in every activity to create the social fabric of a club. But that's the value of a club. That's why you have dinner with your neighbors at the club restaurant rather than going around town. Another point is the income statement is recognized as the engine or the system to drive programming and staff. I would love it if John Fetzik spent every dollar a member dues giving members value every year. The objective is not to run it as a profitable, and it has to be a little bit profitable. We have to have a little bit of a surplus. But that's not where you generate your capital funding. You give members the value. But the strategic focus is the capital budget, which you gain from capital dues and those sequestered funds I talked about earlier from outside play, initiation fees, capital dues, and potentially a real estate transfer fee. Some misconceptions, and this is a chart right out of club benchmarking, who looks at 1,800 clubs around the country, but more specifically looks in the Florida area at residential clubs. And we've looked at residential clubs with 27 holes of golf in the southeastern part of the United States. These same rules apply. Efficiency, is the club operating the most effective way on pricing, staffing, labor costs, material purchases, personnel deployment? No matter how you look at it, efficiency affects less than 7% of costs. It's important, it's something to focus on, but it's something for John and his team and Curtis and their teams to focus on, not an everyday issue in front of the board. We supply input, but that's their role. Food and beverage. A lot of people suggest food and beverage restaurants should run at a profit. Clubs choosing to profit in food and beverage are the weakest clubs in the marketplace. Almost all successful clubs, and clearly the top tier clubs, all subsidize the food and beverage. You only get one turnover a night. You pour the drink of your member's choice. You stock a bottle of liquor just for one member, if you will. You customize service, and you allow people to linger and chat and don't try to turn over your tables. And you only draw from your membership. You don't draw from the several 100,000 people in Sarasota, Manatee. You draw from, at most, 2,200 people.
What percentage are outsiders that come in and use our?
At dinner, we don't allow any outsiders. Outsiders come in for lunch, usually as a function of golf, and outsiders do come in on the Sunday brunch promotion. Some people say lower initiation fees and lower dues attract more members. That's not true. The clubs that are most successful have higher initiation fees and higher dues, which generate capital to make those clubs move and maintain their excellent performance. Some people say golf is enough, but golf-centric clubs are generally weak, and clubs with broad services and amenities are much broader. Finally, restricting capital investment keeps things affordable. But if you restrict capital investment, all you're doing is delaying it, kicking the can down the road. You have to maintain your facilities, just like you have to maintain the roof on your house, and you know when it's time to update your kitchen or your bathrooms or what have you. They're big expenses, but you got to do them.
That's what happened when we took over the course.
No, this chart compares our club with others in the area with 27 holes of golf. I think there are 21 clubs, and our dues are generally at the lower end for full membership. This is full member equivalent dues. Our revenues are pretty much in the middle, a little over 9 million. We're going to do about 9.3, 9.4 this year. But our capital prior to present time that we've had is only from initiation fees. It's really very low compared to what the median club offers. Our benchmarking looks at clubs as green, yellow, or red. Green being the top tier, yellow being the middle, red being ones that are very weak and failing as we move forward. And you'll notice these attract increased member satisfaction. People who want to initiation fee, you get increased capital income, and you get,
Mr. Ludmerer,
yes,
we can't hear you right there. And I know nobody's on, but if you want for the recording, I just thought you should know.
okay, thank you.
Sorry, thank you.
Appreciate the input, thank you.
You're
Okay.
welcome.
Conversely, on the red side, if you restrict capital investment, you have fewer offerings, you have less breadth of membership and member satisfaction, you have lower initiation fees, you're getting less cash flow during the year, which gives you decreased capital income and lower return on invested capital. Let me quickly, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. For those of you who are at home, you can blow this chart up, which is a summary of our current membership, about 2,200 members. We've previously talked in the May meeting about the potential dues increase for fiscal 23 of about 2.5%. And a 5% capital dues. We are, as I mentioned earlier, acquiring our capital funding through an allocation of funds from outside golf, capital dues for members, residents at 5% and non-residents at 10%. And we are looking at higher initiation fees for non-resident members to offset some of the investment the residents have put into the club. When you compare our costs versus comparable clubs, there's an eye chart here. I'm not asking you to respond, but you can take a look at it in detail. And everybody says, well, you're comparing our club to a private club, or you're comparing our club to Rosedale, but we're much semi-private, and they're not up to our standards, so that doesn't count. I offer you our club on top here and other clubs in the area, and believe we are fully competitive in our pricing.
Mr. Ludmerer, you've had a caller join, just so you know.
Someone has a question?
No, there is a caller who has joined your Zoom meeting.
Okay, thank you.
They're via phone, and I knew you wouldn't see them, so I wanted to let you know.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
For those who joined, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question if you have one. You may go back and look at the recording, which we'll make available afterwards, which will bring you up to date with what we've discussed so far. In looking at our needs for the future, the charge of the board is to say what both our current and anticipated future home buyers are looking for in a community, and things that will maintain the value of our club membership as well as the value of our homes. A driving thrust has been in wellness and fitness. It's come about over the last 15 or 20 years, and every indication throughout the country, if you will, is that thrive for wellness and fitness, for longevity, for vitality in seniors is a continuing trend. We currently have about 1,250 square feet to some fitness equipment that's very cramped. And we have one class studio that's 375 square feet that can barely hold 6 people with an instructor. We need an improved fitness wellness facility. We can argue over the scope of it. Our initial projection was to have one with about 10,000 square feet. We've scaled that back significantly based on your feedback. But we're looking at something that shows a 50 to 70% increase in area for equipment, for cardio and a stretch area. We're looking at 3 class studios, 2 for classes and 1 dedicated to a spin room, which is a very strong senior activity. The other room may be dedicated to Pilates or something along that line. Arguably, we could perhaps go to 2 studios. That will come out in the final design, and everybody will have input into what we do there. But I think based on our projections, 3 studios would be ideal. You'll need space for reception, administration, and restrooms, laundry, storage, workshop, mechanicals. You're going to talk about 6,000 square feet. If you combine that in a facility with staff offices, let me back up. So that's about what's needed for fitness wellness. For those of you who have visited our staff offices upstairs in the varsity club, you recognize that they're truly insufficient, 1, for the current staff we have, and 2, they represent a number of challenges. They're not up to current codes. There are potential problems with trip hazards, ceilings. There are no windows, of course. It's a very difficult place to work and a difficult place to hire quality staff to serve our membership. What we need is about 8 to 10 offices. We're not talking about palatial things here. We're talking about 120 square foot offices with a larger one for the general manager who gets a conference table. A few in cubes, but we need a conference room. There is no staff conference room available for a meeting. We probably need a break room, a place where they can have a cup of coffee up there. There's no running water, no bathrooms, and the same level as the office. They use the same locker rooms that the maintenance crew uses downstairs. If we combine it with fitness wellness, we don't need restrooms. So it all depends on what the location might be, but we're talking 3,000 to 4,000 square feet. Call it 3,500 square feet.
Steve, what's the impact on additional full-time equivalents as far as staffing? And has that been looked at for the future income and expense?
Yeah, we have currently 12 people, probably 9 of which would be in offices and 3 might be in cubes. Longer term, we have at least 1 added person we're looking at. There might be a second going forward, but we're 2,200 members is about where we are. If we get to 2,500, perhaps we'll want somebody more in program planning or what have you.
Yeah, I was just sketching some numbers based upon, these increases, what is it going to cost from an operational standpoint in years in the future and the budget in that. So that's why I asked the question.
Yeah, and we have put together a 5-year forecast looking toward the future into the staffing needs that we have. And just leave it at that for the moment. Meeting activity, when several of us on the board talked with Lori when we first came on board, and she, what was the one thing you needed more than anything else? And her statement was meeting space. We don't have adequate, we've had the 2 pieces of the varsity plan, and that's about it. We try to use back corners of the dining room for MGA meetings, and we try to use this here. And yes, the community center has provided a couple of conference rooms, which are very well used, but we need place for member meetings, and we don't have them.
How much of an impact would golf tournaments have additional requirements for meeting space? Because I've been to, several golf tournaments where you have, a lot of people come, 200-300 people, I don't think we have the capacity for that, or we run out of.
Well, we do with the dining, for the member guest event, we dedicate a full dining room activity, Richard, and that is adequate at this point in time. If we were to increase our full membership, we're about 360 now in full members. If we were to go to 400, we're probably on the borderline. At 450, we're probably out of space.
So those things can be good revenue generators, is the reason I throw that out.
But, you know, what we need here, we're talking about is 3 combinable venues that would perhaps seat 250 people. Maybe you could bring in a comedy night, or have a lecture series, or have places for individual photography groups, or arts and crafts groups, or others, the scuba group to meet so that they don't have to meet on the boardwalk in the rain. We need 3 combinable venues, 3,000 square feet. So when you put this all together, we need about 15,000 square feet at $400 a square foot. You're talking about $6 million. We've outlined what some alternatives here on a project. Option 1 is basically remodeling of the varsity club to put offices and some meeting space there, but that doesn't address our fitness needs. Option 2 is it puts in a building somewhere, or maybe 2 new buildings, so they're 1 story, and addresses both the fitness, meeting space, and office space needs. And, you know, there might be a 3rd option. We haven't explored where that might be at this point in time. We're still exploring that based on member input and otherwise. But really, option 2 is where the board feels we should be. A bond of $18 million will yield us about $15 million in project funding, and provide the basis for us to go into in-depth planning with consultation from members and advisory groups to bring this club up to date with the facilities and amenities that are exemplary, outstanding, and support long-term membership. One of the questions asked, and I'll run through this a little quickly, is who should pay? And we believe, as a board, that the club members should pay for operating capital needs of the club. These are the break-fix items that occur every year that don't put in new capacity, but are just stuff that wears out or fails prematurely and goes forward, and that should come out of member capital dues. However, when you look at infrastructure and master plan capital, we believe homeowners and members should pay. The homeowners essentially own the country club through a recreation district, albeit, but we control that entity, and we either make it up to the standard we want, or we let it erode to a lesser standard. And just like your home, where you're replacing a roof, or your pool, where you're putting in a new lining, or you're deciding to build an addition, we believe both homeowners and members have to contribute to those infrastructure needs, which help enhance homeowner value.
The question that's been brought to my attention, Steve, has been, as a resident of University Park and a non-golf member, I have no access whatsoever to any of the infrastructure regarding golf. So therefore, there's those of us who are non-golf members who are saying, should not golf and the infrastructure, the irrigation and those type of things, should not the golf members be responsible for their infrastructure as a separate ongoing thing? Instead of having the 1,200 homeowners of University Park subsidize the golf course, of which we have no access to be part of other than looking at it through our window. There's a difference of opinion.
I understand, and, I believe. You want to say something, please? The golf course ambiance, the appearance of it when you walk in makes the community and presents this serene, relaxing view. It supports home values and is a necessary entity in maintaining the home values of the club. If we didn't have the golf course, we wouldn't have the home value that we currently enjoy. It's part of your system. Another way to potentially look at it is if you had a school bond and the membership in your neighborhood, your residents increased, and you had to put a wing on the school and an extra ball field out there for the junior varsity as well as the varsity. You as a homeowner want to do that to support your home value in that neighborhood. Similarly, the homeowners here need to support, in my view, the overall infrastructure of the community.
So as the treasurer, you're saying that in the future, right now and in the future, the homeowners of University Park are going to be required to subsidize the golf course, even though we don't have access to it, and even though that's not always the case in other courses in this area. So therefore, why do we not have some sort of access, and why should we be subsidizing with no benefit?
You're welcome to play on, if you're a member of the club, you're welcome to play at a discount.
And go under the $49, including cart discounts, right?
I mean, okay, we can argue what the discount ought to be, okay? You have that opportunity.
I just wanted to make the point that's been brought to my attention that, the feeling is the golf course, since we've invested heavily in it as homeowners, not golfers, should be self-sufficient based upon the volumes, which I think are increasing based upon our pricing and things like that, and yet keep it at a top-notch golf course like it is today, beautiful to the appearance, which is helping everybody's home values.
I understand the different viewpoint. I can only share the viewpoint that we have. We believe the infrastructure and the monies for the irrigation system also support the rackets, tennis, croquet, and pickleball areas. I mean, this is the pump station that serves the entire community. In addition, we expect that an improved irrigation system will use less water, which will in turn enhance the availability of water for much of the community where there's dissatisfaction with the twice a week watering or every other week watering scenario. I know you have to go, so
Go ahead.
I
The
want to.
golf course does support the whole rest of the club too. I mean, it's the cash cow, if you want to put it that way.
Okay, I've talked about the capital funding recommendations in the past. If we do what we've suggested, we will have capital reserves that will support long-term. So this, I'll never say never, never, but if we have this bond and make this investment, well, we put into place the systems that will provide for reserves over the long term, so this would, unless you want to put in a.
No, I respect where you've come from and the fact that you're trying to have funded reserves. And I think that's very commendable and that's required to have a successful organization. I appreciate it.
Okay, here's an important, let me, since I expected Sloane Gardens in Henley here, I took an example of what the bond we're talking about might cost for an average Sloane Gardens home. The market value average in your neighborhood is $979,000. That's out of the county's database for fiscal 21. I mean, it is what it is. Okay. And using.
That's the property appraisers.
Right.
Not the real market value.
Yeah, and that's the market value in the property appraiser's book. And, using an $18 million bond at 5.5%, it would average $1,724. Similarly, in Henley, with an average market value, according to the property appraiser, of $482,000, their average per home would be $1,135, and it would vary by community. Here is a list of some selected neighborhoods and the cost average per home using the 50-50 formula we used earlier with an $18 million bond at 5.5%.
For 30 years.
For 30 years. If we look at alternatives to bond funding, there aren't any good ones, to make a long story short. One benefit we get out of being a recreation district is that we can issue municipal debt. And these tax-free bonds are the lowest cost financing we will achieve from any source. We will not get it from bank loans. We would not get it from alternative sources. UPCAI reserve.
What about the HOA? With the HOA is not getting that kind of return on their investments, would it not be advantageous for the HOA to invest some of their funds that can be repaid from the RD to get a higher rate of return, which benefits everybody?
Okay. There are legal hurdles to doing that, as the HOA is restricted in what they need to do with reserves and how they manage them. And they're needed for their projects. So that should there be an unexpected issue, UPCAI needs that money, and we need to build our own reserves. And they would be insufficient in any event. I mean, you might get $2 or $3 million, but you're still going to need.
I understand. I'm just saying it's a higher rate of return than the HOA is getting.
Right.
Everything needs to be looked at. That's the only reason I brought it up.
It is an option. There are legal hurdles to doing it. We could look at an annual assessment, put an assessment on every homeowner, but that takes the current homeowners and makes them invest in something that has a 30-year life. I'd rather match the long-lived assets with the people who will be using them over their useful life. So therefore, a long-term bond kind of makes sense. And, using our reserves will take several years to build. There's no way we're going to be able to get the reserves and do the investments we need on a piecemeal approach. Here's an interesting chart, and it's a little bit of an eye chart again, but let me share. This is your home, Richard. I picked it out. Okay?
Why not?
And your assessed value is $827,000. And this shows what your ad valorem taxes are, what the fire district charges, the UPRD 2019 bond, the HOA fee that you're paying in Sloane Gardens, and the potential that you would pay for an $18 million bond at 5.5%. Total is $21,815.
The amount I'm paying for the $40 million bond is about the same amount that I'm paying for the $18 million bond? Is that just interest rates or?
That's mostly interest rates, yes. Yes. I mean, as you know, interest rates came down during the process of our discussions earlier.
That's why it didn't settle right away.
And they have a big impact. Like comparable home in Lakewood Ranch, I picked out one that was $767,000, not quite apples to apples, but about as close as I could get, where I had really curated data on what they were getting. And their ad valorem was $11,000. Their fire district, Lakewood Ranch, CDD payments, and their HOA fee, and they're not maintenance free, and Sloane isn't maintenance free, so those two are comparable. And with their HOA fee, without cable and not maintenance free, they're paying $19,900, almost $20,000. So the difference is, what did I have, $1,800? Difference in assessed value is $1,300. If you add the cable that we get in University Park, you're actually $800 a year. I'm better. You know, I'm not sure from year to year this is exactly the number, but what I'm putting out here is, even with the new bond, we're not out of line in our competitive costs for a similar home. I also did a study on Henley. Henley came out differently, and it's the only community so far that I found to be a bit more expensive, and I'm not 100% sure why. I believe Henley used some surplus and reserves to subsidize their annual HOA, which may have brought the HOA down a bit versus other years. But I'd be pleased to talk with Don Barron or someone else there to see why this is a little bit unusual, because I haven't seen this in another community. And looking at the other neighborhoods, the worst I've seen is about a $500 negative, not a $2,000 negative. But once again, they're not terribly out of line. Henley maybe has one of the highest HOA fees in University Park, and I'm sure somebody else more knowledgeable could explain why that is to me.
Steve, I'm sorry, be excused.
Okay, finally, just let me, I would welcome support for Sloane Gardens and Henley for our $18 million bond addressing the projects we've put forth. I welcome additional questions, but I really look for your support, and I thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve, very much.